My name is Elias Varro. I'm 31 years old, born and raised in Missoula, Montana, a place where silence stretches wider than the sky, and people speak more with narrowed eyes than with open mouths. I was the kind of kid adults called serious, even when I was 5. I didn't cry much, didn't talk much. I learned early that some faces invite warmth, others invite whispers. Mine always pulled the second kind. I have a congenital condition that caused half my face, from temple to jaw, to form with a deep, raised birthmark, an irregular patchwork of crimson and wine-dark purple. No 2 days was it the same color, depending on weather, temperature, emotion. It pulses when I'm angry, flares when I'm ashamed. Kids said it looked like someone spilled red ink across my skull. I stopped looking in mirrors at 9. Stopped expecting people to look at me with anything but discomfort soon after. I didn't come to the studio to prove anything. It was a casual invite, a local showcase of content creators, small-time filmmakers, aspiring musicians, digital artists. They said it would be low-key, intimate, casual. My hands shook the whole drive anyway. I'd started filming abstract visual poems a year ago. Shots of light through wet windows, dust in sunbeams, silence stretched across abandoned rooms. I never appeared in them. My voice never broke the surface. People followed because the mood spoke. I liked that. I liked not being seen. But today was different. They wanted creators to show up in person, to talk about process, to meet each other. They wanted faces. The room was small but white-hot. Artificial lighting cast everything in a plastic glow, and bodies moved in slow clusters, name tags flashing against lanyards. Everyone had that soft sheen of people used to being watched. They had the kind of smiles that knew they'd be seen. I stood by the coffee station, hands in pockets, hoping no one would remember to introduce me. The air was thick with curated laughter and the quiet desperation of small talk. I barely spoke, just nodded. The woman who said it had the kind of presence that walked into a room 3 seconds before she did. Blonde, tall, open-mouthed, the kind of person who wore confidence like skin. I didn't know her name. I only knew her voice, and when she saw me, she tilted her head the way people do when they're pretending to be kind. And then she laughed. Loud. A sound like breaking glass. It wasn't a whisper. She said it like it was obvious, like she was performing. She said it about my face, about the mark, about how no one would love a face like that. The laugh came first, then the words. They weren't meant to hurt me, not directly. That's what people like her think, that cruelty is harmless if it's funny, that you can throw a match if your smile is big enough. The room didn't go silent. It got louder. People didn't look at her. They looked at me. And that was worse. I saw the glances, quick, sideways, sticky. Some turned away like they were sparing me. Others stared too long. Waiting. For what? A scene? A break? A defense? I didn't give them one. I just stood there. Still. I didn't touch my face. Didn't drop my eyes. I let the moment swell like a bruise. I watched her face twist slightly, that flicker of discomfort when the joke doesn't land the way you thought. When the target doesn't flinch. That was the first time I understood what it meant to let your face speak for you. I wasn't angry. I was somewhere colder than that. Beneath anger is a frozen place, and I'd lived there long enough to know the terrain. You learn to breathe through the stillness, to let humiliation calcify into something harder. You let the world watch, and you give it nothing back. That's power. Not what you say, but what you refuse to say. Later, when I left the room, no one followed. No one asked if I was okay. I walked to my car without touching my keys for 5 minutes. Just sat there, windows rolled down, heart slow and steady. Something had cracked, but not the way she intended. I didn't want revenge. I wanted to turn the silence into something beautiful. something unignorable. That night, for the first time, I turned the camera on myself, not to speak, not to explain, just to be. The light caught the edge of the birthmark. I didn't flinch. I posted the video just before midnight. No caption, no tags, no music. Just me, sitting in the same dim apartment where I had always hidden from cameras, letting the light roll across my face like I owed it something. The lens didn't blink, so I didn't either. It stayed on me for almost 2 minutes, unmoving, uninterrupted. I watched it once before, uploading. The mark on my skin bloomed like a bruise under the soft glow of the desk lamp. The left side of my face looked darker, heavier, older. It didn't matter. That wasn't the point. I closed the laptop and walked away before the views could start, before the silence could feel like failure. By morning, the silence was gone. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Thousands of views. Then tens of thousands. Comments flooding in like a cracked dam. Some just emojis. Some paragraphs. Some just one word, repeated over and over again. Beautiful. 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 I didn't believe it. Not really. I kept waiting for the turn. For the moment the wave would shift and all of them would start saying what she said in that room. But it didn't turn. It kept building. By noon, someone had already downloaded the video and reposted it on 3 other platforms. By the end of the day, it had crossed 1 million views. And there it was, buried under thousands of comments. Her name, her apology. It was one word, sorry. No punctuation, no elaboration, just the lowercase whisper of guilt that didn't even ask, to be forgiven. I stared at it for longer than I should have. I didn't respond. I wouldn't. This wasn't about her anymore. It was never really about her. It was about what I'd carried for 31 years. The sideways looks, the pity, the stares that burned like acid even when they came with polite smiles. People don't realize what it does to you, being looked at too long. You start to fold, yourself down, piece by piece, until all that's left is an outline, a version of you that takes up less space. I had done that my entire life. That video was the first time I'd chosen to take the space back, but it didn't stop with one video. People started asking for more. Not words, not stories. Just me, my face, my silence, my stillness. I became a mirror for strangers. They projected their own pain, their own shame, onto the screen. Somehow, my image gave them permission to sit with themselves. I didn't understand it. I didn't pretend to. I just kept showing up. Lens to skin, light to shadow, truth to frame. And then came the message. It wasn't from her. It was from someone else in that room, the man who had looked away the moment. She laughed. He wrote that he remembered what she said, that he hadn't laughed, that he'd wanted to say something but didn't. He wrote that watching the video made him feel like a coward, that the silence in the clip had been louder than anything he could have said. I didn't answer him either. Not because I was angry, but because I understood him. I knew what it meant to want to disappear when cruelty entered the room. I'd done it too many times to judge him now, but his message stayed with me. Not for what he said, but for what he didn't. He still hadn't said my name. None of them had. The people sharing the video, reposting it, reacting to it, they all referred to me in third person. The guy, the man, the one with the face. I wasn't anonymous. I was symbolic. They didn't want to know me. They wanted what I represented. That's when the dread started to creep in. The comments grew faster. The shares more frequent. And with every click, every new wave of attention, I felt the air tighten. It wasn't praise anymore. It was hunger, like they were feeding on me. Like my pain had become a kind of performance they couldn't stop watching. They didn't want to help me heal. They wanted to witness the wound. So I gave them another video. Same setting. Same silence. But this time, I looked directly into the lens. Not around it, not past it. Into it. and I didn't blink. The camera rolled for 4 minutes. I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. The light moved across my features like it was tracing a map of something broken and still beating. When it ended, I didn't check the numbers. I knew what would happen. I just sat in the dark and waited for the room to cool again. But it didn't. Nothing cooled. Everything kept rising. I never imagined that silence could be louder than sound, that stillness could echo. But now, it followed me everywhere. In the grocery store, a man looked at me too long and didn't look away. On the street, someone stopped me and asked if I was him, but didn't use my name. Even when they spoke, their words were soft, like they didn't want to disturb the image I had become. Not a person, a presence, an idea. My face had stopped being mine. It belonged to millions now, projected, captured, reshared, frozen into thumbnails, dissected by algorithms, and lit up on strangers' phones in the middle of the night. I started to move differently, slower, less sudden. I felt watched, even, when I was alone. I'd never been seen before, not really, but now there were pixels of me scattered across platforms I didn't control, mirrored in places I didn't know existed. It was supposed to feel like power, like reclamation, but it felt like standing under a microscope, like I was made of glass and everyone was leaning in, looking too closely, not to understand, but to confirm something they had already decided about me. So I leaned into the silence even more. I began filming in black and white, stripped down every shot, no edits, no background, just my face against gray. I kept the light low, barely enough to separate me from the dark. I watched every frame back, studying how my expression sat in it. Time, how the mark along my cheek swelled or faded depending on breath, on tension. I'd never studied myself like that before. Never really let myself exist in my own gaze. The lens became the only place I trusted, the only place that didn't flinch. My audience grew faster than I could track. They started naming me with words I didn't recognize. Icon, symbol, raw beauty. Some even called it art. They turned my silence into meaning, built narratives I hadn't written. They called the mark a fire, a river, a constellation. They said it told a story, but it didn't. It just existed. It had always existed. I wasn't brave. I wasn't making a statement. I was just tired. Tired of hiding. Tired of pretending the shame belonged to me. Night, I read the comments. Not because I needed praise, but because I needed to know if they still saw me, or if I had vanished into the idea of me. Some people wrote that they cried when they watched. Some said it made them confront things they hadn't faced in years, their own scars, their own shapes, their own reflections. Others just said, "Thank you," over and over again, like I had pulled them from something heavy. I didn't know how to receive that. I didn't want to be a savior. I just wanted to be real. But every new video felt heavier to make. The stillness, once comforting, began to ache. I would sit for hours, frozen in front of the lens, trying to find that same expression that had moved so many. But now it felt forced, rehearsed, like I was chasing something I had never meant to catch. I started overthinking the light, the angles, whether the mark looked right that day, whether my stillness had changed, whether I was still enough, honest enough. I had built a voice out of pixels, and now it was the only voice anyone wanted from me. If I broke the silence, I was afraid I'd break the spell. So I didn't speak, even when I wanted to, even when the weight of it pressed against my ribs, like a second heartbeat. I'd open my mouth in the dark and say nothing, just to feel the possibility of words, just to remember what they tasted like. I stopped filming for a week, just 7 days, and in that time I watched the comments shift. Not many, but enough. Some asked if I was okay. Others said the silence felt different now, heavier, colder, like I had pulled back, like I was disappearing again. They didn't know how close they were to the truth. Because I had begun to wonder, if I wasn't performing silence anymore, did they still want me? Was the power in my presence or in their perception of it? Had I become valuable because I didn't speak or because they could speak through me? I went out one evening, without the camera, without a plan. I sat on a bench in the park just before sundown. A child walked by, stared at my face, didn't look away, didn't smile. Just looked. I stared back. The moment stretched, breathless. Then she left. No fear, no comment. Just acknowledgement. Real. Brief. Human. I returned home and turned the camera back on. This time I didn't sit still. I moved, slowly, barely perceptibly. I breathed. I blinked. My chest rose and fell. I let the silence live, but I let it live with me, not instead of me. It wasn't about being a symbol anymore. It was about reclaiming my shape. They called it my most powerful video yet. They said they had never seen me so alive. It didn't matter how many people watched. I could feel it. Something had shifted. The silence I had used like a weapon, like a shield, like a lifeline, was no longer mine alone. They had taken it, shaped it, turned it into content. Not all of them, not with malice, but enough. Enough to feel the difference. My face had become familiar in places I'd never been. People called it inspiring, raw, vulnerable. They didn't know how calculated it had become, how many takes I threw away, how long I sat, unmoving, just to chase the feeling they wanted, honest but not too heavy, broken but not too ugly. I wasn't crafting videos anymore. I was curating the illusion of intimacy. The numbers grew, always faster than I expected. 5 million, 10, 20. They celebrated milestones I didn't ask for. They posted screenshots of my face on Message, boards, made fan edits, stitched my silence into music, quoted me even though I had never said a word. Every new piece of content made me feel less like a person and more like a product. Like they had found beauty in my damage, but only because it made them feel better about their own. I noticed her comment again. The same one, sorry, pinned now, by some stranger who thought it was poetic. It sat there, buried under heart emojis, reaction gifs, half-formed confessions from people I would never meet. She had written it only once, and yet it lived forever now. Not because it mattered to her, because it mattered to them. They turned it into a redemption arc. She apologized, and the world clapped for her, as if remorse typed in lowercase could undo years of humiliation, as if forgiveness could be earned through visibility. I watched the likes climb on that comment. Thousands, tens of thousands. People upvoting her apology as if it were content, too, as if her moment of guilt deserved the same applause they gave. Me. That was when I knew. They weren't here for healing. They were here for the performance of it. They liked apologies more than accountability. They liked pain more than resolution. They didn't want me to get better. They wanted me to stay in the frame, stay broken, stay useful. There were days I didn't film. I told myself I was resting, recovering, but the truth was uglier. I was testing them, seeing how long it would take before they lost interest, before the silence felt stale. I would scroll through comments, searching for cracks. They were subtle, but there. Some asked if I was running out of ideas. Some said the recent videos felt repetitive, that the magic was fading. They didn't mean harm, but it cut deeper than the insults ever had. At least cruelty was honest. This felt worse, like a love that only existed when I was hurting the right way. I thought about deleting everything, wiping it clean, reclaiming my anonymity, letting the pixels dissolve back into nothing. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not because of fame. Not because of the attention. Because of the people who didn't comment, didn't like, didn't share, but wrote to me directly. Quiet messages, long paragraphs, people who saw something in me that felt like survival, who wrote about faces they'd hidden, words they'd never said aloud, families they couldn't return to. I read those at night. They reminded me why I had turned the camera on in the first place. Not for forgiveness, not for recognition, but for something closer to proof that I existed, that I could be seen and still stay whole. Still, I couldn't stop seeing her face. Not the one from the comments section, the one from that room. The laugh, the tilt of her head, the way she looked at me like I was a mistake someone had left uncorrected. Her face was nowhere on my feed. She never posted her own videos. She hadn't even tagged me in the apology. But I knew she watched. I could feel it. Like a phantom. Ache. She didn't want redemption. She wanted relevance. She wanted to be part of something now that everyone else was watching. And they were watching. I couldn't walk into a store without someone recognizing me. Some asked for photos. Some didn't ask. They'd pull out their phones quietly, pretending to scroll, but I saw the angle of the lens. I saw the hesitation in their eyes. No one wanted to look too long, but none of them could look away. They treated me like a landmark, a thing you see once and tell others about, something to check off, something that makes you feel different. But only for a second. At night, I stood in front of the mirror with the lights off, only the soft glow of my screen lighting the room. I traced the mark on my face with 2 fingers, not to wish it away, just to remember that it was real, that I was real. The screen didn't own me. The silence didn't define me. The likes didn't absolve anyone. I thought about recording something new, something different. A video where I would speak, finally. Not loud, not rehearsed, just one sentence, one truth. I opened my mouth in the dark, and then closed it again. Not yet. It started happening in ways I didn't expect. A school in Oregon invited me to appear, virtually of course, as part of a media literacy week. They wanted me to talk about authenticity, about representation, about finding strength in vulnerability. I declined. They wrote again, said I didn't even need to speak. Just appear. Just be present. Like that alone would be enough. Like my face had become a kind of language in itself, something they could hold up in front of a class of teenagers and say, "See? He exists. That means you can too." That wasn't the only request. Brands started reaching out, offering partnerships, features, silent campaigns about acceptance, diversity, digital presence. They always said the same thing. They admired my message. My message. As if I had written one. As if I had chosen to turn my face into a campaign. They didn't see a person. They saw the story, the journey, the easy arc. Scarred man turns camera inward, teaches the world a lesson without saying a word. Click, share, forget. I wasn't angry, just numb. I began waking up to thousands of new notifications and felt nothing. Not pride, not joy, just a cold hum in my chest. I stopped reading the comments, stopped opening the messages. I filmed out of routine, not intention. My face on the screen felt like someone else's, like I was watching a version of myself living a life I didn't sign up for. Somewhere along the way, I'd become the internet's mirror, and every day I gave it back its reflection. But none of it reflected me. Still, I couldn't stop. The more I tried to pull away, the more the audience leaned in. There were posts on forums tracking my every upload, analyzing the tilt of my head, the quality of light, the texture of my silence. Some claimed to know what I was thinking. Others built entire theories about the meaning of my stillness. There were debates over whether I should ever speak at all. Some said it would ruin the mystery. Others said it was the next logical step. None of them asked what I wanted. One night I walked past a cafe, and through the window I saw 2 people, watching one of my videos on a phone propped between their coffee cups. They weren't talking, just watching. I stopped outside without meaning to. My breath fogged the glass. They stared at my image, not knowing that the real thing was 2 feet away. I looked nothing like the version of me on their screen. Tired, unshaven, shoulders slouched from a sleepless week. I wanted to knock on the window, to tell them I wasn't what they thought. But I didn't. I turned away and kept walking, the shape of their attention still clinging to the back of my neck like a shadow. After that, I stopped uploading for a month. No warning. No explanation. I thought maybe it would fade. Maybe without fresh content the algorithm would forget me. The numbers would drop. The comments would slow. People would move on. But the opposite happened. They noticed the absence. Screenshots of old videos started resurfacing with new captions. People speculated. Was I okay? Was I gone? Had the silence meant something more than I intended? Then, one evening, a video appeared that wasn't mine. It was a compilation, clips from all my uploads, spliced together with soft music, overlaid with text. A stranger narrating their interpretation of my journey. They called it The Man Who Taught Us to Look Again. Millions watched it. Millions shared it. And suddenly, I was everywhere again. But this time, I wasn't even present. That night, I sat in the dark with the glow of my monitor casting slow shadows on the walls. I watched that video 3 times. Not because I liked it, because I needed to understand what I had become. The words weren't cruel. They were reverent, grateful even, but they didn't belong to me. They belonged to the version of myself that the world had created. A quiet prophet of self-acceptance. A reluctant hero in a story I never told. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just sat there, fingers hovering above the keyboard, wondering what it would cost to reclaim my own voice, to be more than their symbol, to be flawed, angry, unpoetic. I could feel the weight of that decision like a second spine pressing through my back. I knew that once I crossed that threshold, once I said something real, raw, human, it would break the illusion. I would no longer be the image that made people feel things. I would just be me. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the silence had done what it needed to do. Maybe it had opened the door. But it was up to me to step through it, and maybe, finally, say something. I recorded the final video without ceremony. No build-up. No carefully adjusted lighting. I didn't sit in the usual spot. I didn't smooth the lines of my shirt. I didn't check the frame. I just turned the camera on, let it find me, and waited. There was no silence this time. I breathed. Not deliberately, not rhythmically. Just the way a body breathes when it's no longer trying to hold anything in. My chest moved unevenly. My fingers twitched against my thigh. The mark on my face, now familiar to millions, caught the edge of a warm light bulb, and instead of blooming like fire or bruises, it just rested. Not heroic. Not tragic. Just there. Like any other part of me. I didn't plan to speak. I had told myself I wouldn't. That the silence was the message. That it had always been enough. But as the minutes stretched and the lens stayed, still, I felt something open. Not for the audience, not for them, but for me. My voice, when it came, wasn't polished or resonant. It cracked on the second word. It sounded like someone learning how to use language again, like a man digging through rubble for something worth saving. I didn't say much. I didn't try to wrap it all up. There was no conclusion, no confession, no final quote. Just a sentence, a truth, a small place to start. After I uploaded it, I closed the laptop and didn't wait for the numbers. I didn't. Check the comments. I went for a walk. It was late. The streets were nearly empty. I passed 2 teenagers leaning against a bus stop. One of them glanced up, and for a moment, I thought he recognized me. His eyes flicked to my face, to the shape of the mark, but he said nothing, just nodded. The kind of nod people give each. Other when words are unnecessary. I kept walking. In the following days, the video spread faster than anything I had posted before. Screenshots of my face mid-sentence flooded timelines. People repeated the line I had spoken like it was sacred, like it gave them permission to say something they had never dared to before. I didn't respond to any of it. I didn't give interviews. I didn't explain what I meant. That wasn't the point. The point was never clarity. It was always presence. It was always the act of being seen without having to justify it. Some people hated it. They said I had ruined it, that the mystery was what made it meaningful, that by speaking, I had broken the spell, that by becoming human, I had become less. They missed the silent version of me, the one who didn't ask to be heard, just watched. They said I owed them more than a whisper. But they were wrong. I didn't owe them anything, she commented again. The same profile, the same lowercase name, not just sorry this time. A longer message, a paragraph. She tried to explain. She said she was young then, that it was a joke, that she didn't know what it meant. She said she had learned a lot, that my videos had taught her something about grace, about presence, about herself. I didn't reply. I read the message once and let it drift down the endless feed of comments like a leaf into a river. It wasn't my job to carry her guilt or her growth. I had done enough lifting in silence. Her apology wasn't mine to validate. It belonged to her now, not me. And maybe that was enough. Not redemption, just distance. In the weeks that followed, I felt the current shift. Not drastically, not all at once. But the obsession softened. The heat cooled. People still watched, still followed, but the intensity dimmed. I wasn't a spectacle anymore, just another person online, another face. The silence, once sacred, had found its ending. And in that ending, something else had room to begin. I went back to filming quiet things, rain against the window, dust in sunbeams, old gloves on a wire fence. But sometimes I let the camera catch a glimpse of me. Not centered, not posed, just in the corner of the frame, moving through it like anyone else. I no longer feared being seen, but I no longer needed to be either. Now, when people recognize me, they don't look away, but they also don't look at me like they used to. There's no reverence, no pity, no hunger, just acknowledgement, like I've been returned to the human scale of things. And when I see her face, if I ever do, I don't imagine confrontation or triumph. I imagine her looking away first, not out of shame, but because she won't know where to look. And that, somehow, will be enough.